Hello, everyone. Welcome to Notes on the Future, a conversation with 2021 BoBi Award recipient, Toi Derricotte. I'm Hafizah Geter, co-chair of the Poetry Committee for the Brooklyn Book Festival. I'm going to start by introducing Toi, and then she's going to kick us off with a couple of poems before we start the conversation. Toi is a recipient of the 2020 Frost Medal from Poetry Society of America. Her sixth collection of poetry, I, New and Selected Poems, was published in 2019 and shortlisted for the 2019 National Book Award. Other books of poetry include The Undertaker's Daughter, Tender, Captivity, Natural Birth, and The Empress of the Death House. Her literary memoir, The Black Notebooks, won the Ansfield Wolf Book Award for nonfiction and was a New York Times notable Book of the Year. With Cornelius Eady, she co-founded the Cave Canem Foundation in 1996. And so Toi's gonna kick us off with a poem first. Thank you, Toi.
Okay, thank you, Hafizah. You know, I've been thinking about this conversation for a week. So, like good things, all good things, it came to me that I'd like to read poems and talk a little bit about change. And I had the honor of speaking with Sonia Sanchez today, and she gave me a quote from the Minister of Culture in France, André Malraux, who said the 21st century will be spiritual or it will not be at all, which is an interesting quote, I think. And I'm going to read one poem that I wrote maybe about 40 years ago. And it's one of Hafizah's favorite. It's called The Weakness. That time my grandmother dragged me through the perfume aisles at Saks. She held me up by my arm, hissing, "Stand up." Through clenched teeth, her eyes bright as a dog's cornered in the light. She said it over and over as if she were Jesus and I were dead. She had been solid as a tree, a fur around her neck, a light-skinned matron whose car was parked, who walked on swirling marble and passed through brass openings. In 1945, there was not even a Black elevator operator at Saks. The saleswoman had brought velvet leggings to lace me in and cooed as if in the service of all grandmothers. My grandmother had smiled, but not hungrily, not like my mother, who hated them but wanted to please. And they had smiled back as if they were wearing wooden collars. When my leg gave out, my grandmother dragged me up and held me like God holds saints by the roots of their hair. I begged her to believe I couldn't help it, stumbling, her face white with sweat. She pushed me through the crowd, rushing away from those eyes that saw through her clothes, under her skin, all the way down to the transparent jeans, confessing. So, and then I thought I'd read some poems that I'm writing today. You know, it's always scary when you start writing something a little different than what you wrote before. But we all need to change. And so we're going to talk about change, I think, and how important it is. Here's a little poem that I wrote about a year ago, The Blue Nightgown. So many years of misguided self-reflection, examining every curve in the mirror. Alone, locked down, I buy online 3 ice blue nightgowns I discover I can live in. I glide through living room, dining room, hall, off the floor slightly, like the great opera stars of the 20th century. I'm dressed for singing. My kitchen becomes the stage for the Met. Cutting the lemon, my hand floats, my large self floats. I breathe in and out completely, the blue nightgown floating around my ankles. And this one is one I wrote a couple weeks ago. Rainy day. Maybe it was my favorite angel, Gabriel, the one who stood so humbly before the 15-year-old virgin with a white lily, who came for me yesterday with a huge black umbrella. And as I was walking through the Whole Foods parking lot with heavy sacks, the storm storming down on me, he opened it, staying slightly behind in step, so that I could see the right-hand corner of his silver hair, saying nothing, but walking me all the way to my car. And as I opened the car door, he backed away and disappeared in the rain. And I just want to read this one that I wrote yesterday that I called Sonia to read to her because it's about Sonia. It's called Big Kid on the Block. When I tell another poet, Sonia says she writes a haiku every morning. The poet says, I'm not a haiku girl. I'm not either, I say, but I just do whatever Sonia tells me.
Thank you so much, Toi. That was beautiful. And I love that you're still, calling other poets to read them poems. I love that, the community of that.
Well, that's scary. If they might not like it. I was a little nervous, like maybe she doesn't want to be called Big Kid on the Block, But she is.
The truth is the truth.
But I had a great conversation with her, Hafizah. I'm so lucky, and you're so lucky to know the people that we know, that
Absolutely.
We can talk about what we need to talk about and listen to their wisdom.
Absolutely. I think to kick us off, I feel like it's very rare that you get to sit down and talk about the future with someone who helped make so much of it. And so I think a great way to start is, as Black people, we know to go forward, we got to look back. So I just love if you could just give the audience a quick overview of, how you came to poetry. What did someone bring you to it? And when was it that you kind of knew that this was going to be it?
When I was very young, my aunt worked in a printing room. She was a supervisor of the printing room at Anna's Furs, and so she had her printing press, and she sent ads and everything out. Her office was in the basement, but she could hire Black people, so all of her staff was Black. But she would, we lived with her until I was 7, and she would come home and bring me colored paper and pencils from the printing press,
Yeah.
And I just thought that was, I would just wait at that door. I was 2 years old, and I would just think that was just the greatest gift, and I would write on it. And, of course, I thought I was drawing real things, but at 2 years old or 2.5 or 3, you're probably not drawing real things. But I believed that, I knew my family was struggling for money. So I would draw dollar bills.
Oh my gosh.
And give them to my mother. And I really believed that was money. Yeah. I really believed it. And I couldn't understand why she wasn't happier with these presents, because I thought I had the power to really do something to create her happiness. So I guess I have some kind of strange belief in paper and pencil and writing. I don't know where it came from, honestly. But as I was getting older, maybe 9 or 10, I started writing in a journal and keeping it, and I never read my poems to anyone until I was in high school. I had a nun that I wrote something and I showed her and she encouraged me. And so that was the only time. Now I want to tell this story too. After the birth of my son in a home for unwed mothers, right? Mm-hmm. Which they had at that time, you would go there and a lot of women would give their children up there. It was a very shameful thing, especially for a Black girl to get pregnant and not be married. But I kept my son, and when I came home, I went to show my son to my father. And my father could be very cruel. He could also be very charming and very lovable. And while I was there, I went up in my old bedroom to collect my writing, which I had put in my footlocker, and nothing was there. Oh. And when I came downstairs and asked him, he was holding the baby, what he had done, he said he had burned it all in an oil drum in the backyard. Yeah. So something happened that moment.
Yeah.
It can kill you or it cannot kill you.
Yeah. But either way, it was important enough that he tried to punish you with it. So he knew it was important.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Why would he do that? But I think he grew up in a time where he thought that you teach somebody by making it hard for them. That's what he learned, what Black people learned in slavery and in, to be hard on themselves, to keep quiet, all of that. So it's awful that he taught me terrible things. But if you think about slavery, and how many generations he was away, just 2 from it, really. Yeah. But anyway, then I didn't show anybody, but I kept writing. And then when I came to New York, when I was in my late 20s, I took my first writing class. And the teacher, Pearl London, read a poem called Daddy by Sylvia Plath. Daddy, a very angry poem.
The gateway drug of poems.
Very angry. And I said to myself, oh, I get it.
Yes.
There's some place where you can speak. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be silent.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And you can make something beautiful out of it. Yeah. They tell you it's ugly. Well, then you show them by just making something beautiful and perfect. It's not me, but it's that thing.
Yeah.
And and my belief in that, in poetry, in the power of it to change, to change the relationships between things, and to be a place where things are spoken out and healed,
Yeah.
and not only changing what you write about, but changing who you are. So that's where that comes from in me.
Yeah, and I think also the ability to change how you think you feel about a thing as you write it, especially because poetry is so concise, so tight that the lies really shine through. So you're forced to really, really tell the truth, and the more truth you tell, the more you see someone, it opens up the possibilities of what you see. Yeah.
It really does. I really think unless I had written a lot of the poems and the Black Notebooks, I don't know if, I know I wouldn't be who I am today, but I might not have been able to do some of the things I was able to do, because a lot of the things I've been thinking about myself were that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy. And I think writing these poems that are so hard to write and really being, putting that element in it that we call truth, and standing up to truth and beauty, it's almost like, when I would make a poem like that, it would just sort of feel like, boom, it's like, boom, like I went through another kind of door,
Yeah, and you just come out of it.
You're
It's like,
someplace else.
yeah.
Do you have that too, Hafizah?
I mean, yeah, I just like come out and then I'm like, where am I? It's just like that when you are just completely absorbed and lost, and like that is when when it's just like it's just you and the work. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing about, we could call it magic or spirituality, that it's possible to change the past.
Yes.
And, just like Balrose said, if we don't have a spiritual present right now, there might not be a present.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things Sonia and I were talking about, and Sonia knows so much about this, about how Black people, even in their position of such extreme humiliation and destructive ways of mental torture, even from the very beginning, not knowing who your mother and father are, or where you're from, or,
Yeah.
Still, so many Black people have given us the spiritual change, this offering of the spiritual. I was thinking of the, so many of those women who were mammies, and they were the ones who taught children how to feel good about themselves, and how to be spiritual, because so many people who believed in that way of holding people down were not so good with their kids either, I think.
No, they weren't. Yeah.
So that's a lot that I've just told you I'm sorry if I talk too long.
No, this is great because I mean, I think, one of the things that you're getting at is that like the way art can kind of lead the way to like collective, right? So we know how like suddenly they're trying to ban critical race theory in schools, this thing that they've never taught. And it's just so funny to watch as Black people because I don't know any Black person who has learned what they're trying to ban from school. I mean, I learned about like my mother growing up, we had to like memorize poems. So like we memorized like Gwendolyn Brooks and Langston Hughes and Junior Jordan. And like we like went to Kwanzaa and we never relied on white America to give us our history because it was so skewed, And I think that like we knew that like our history comes from our artists, because people weren't like, we were being ignored in every other aspect. And so this idea that poetry and writing, it is the rest of history. And like, because the history we get is just such a small part.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting, my parents in certain ways were very middle class and desiring to be, in the upper middle class. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of ways that I was taught, just like in that Saks Fifth Avenue poem, a very conflicted self-observation, about Blackness. But at the same time, it was funny, my parents sort of let me hang out. They never stopped me from sort of being around everybody and, and seeking out artists. And, it was strange. It was a strange, dialogue that they allowed to happen. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if some part of them trusted what was bigger out there. At the same time, some part of them was afraid. Yeah. Because they had good reason to be afraid, for their jobs. They had these jobs of middle-class people working in the post office or, and you had to be quiet about a lot. But on the other hand, I think all along they knew and celebrated this rich soul thing that's going on in our culture that we all know about.
Yeah.
And got in on.
It's like that coming together where you can exhale, It's just where you can't tell the difference between laughing, like fighting back, because it's all there together, This is like the freedom of just finally just being outside of that like one game.
And just having fun.
Just having fun and just laughing.
Just
laughing.
Eating that great food, right?
Mm-hmm.
And making jokes and gossiping.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Just wonderful vitality and intelligence.
Yeah.
Such an intelligence to know how to survive and where and when to do this and that and think and feel. And, one of the things my aunt would tell me, when something happened that was extremely painful, she'd say, just put it out of your mind. Now, nowadays, we would say, oh, that's called, when you separate yourself from yourself, it's not a good thing. But then it was great to learn, put it out of your mind.
Yeah, like I feel like it's essentially just like when like older Black folks would just tell you like don't pay them any mind, They're just like, that's going to be how that's going to be, but like in here it can be something else for a moment, and that moments of relief are important.
Yeah, and you gain a lot of power when you have to do very complicated things in your head.
Right. Like the mental processing that we can do so fast.
Yeah.
Just,
And of course, you do a lot of harm to yourself too. And I think that's all, needs to be addressed. That we've also done harm
yeah.
to ourselves and those we love. And so it's a complicated way to go from, a couple centuries where we were treated, and then to change into something to change into people that are not afraid.
Yeah, especially since like it's like the traumatizers are still the same. They just have put on different costumes. They've just updated the outfits, but white supremacy is still there doing the same things.
But again, this is back to my belief in magic.
Mm-hmm.
I believe poetry and the power to that informs a creative act.
Yeah.
Changes things. I mean, I've really seen it happen in my life. And not only at Cave Canem, but with children that I taught for many years in Poets in the School program. Yeah. I would get in touch with some of the kids I taught, for 4 days when they were in the 3rd grade, and when they were 40 years old, they remembered their poem and they remembered what I said, and they remembered the moment writing at their desk. A real creative act changes you.
Yeah, I mean, even when you're trying to write about like something that happens, poetry still requires you to dream, and tries to envision like, okay, what didn't I see and what can I see differently now, And so just like that, every time you sit down to write a poem, you immediately have to acknowledge that more is possible than you first thought.
So do you feel your writing has changed, Hafizah?
I think so. I mean, in one end, it's just doing the reading, I think really coming to understand, I feel when I was in grad school, there was two like talented thoughts of like one, writing is a solitary activity and don't write political poems. Right. Two things that I never quite understand, because when I'm writing, I'm surrounded by books, and I'm also thinking about all the other people that I've read, and thinking about all the other just brilliant people out there thinking it, and be like, okay, what can I say that can help? Is really what I'm thinking about. It's how can I be helpful? Either in terms of saying something new, giving a different vantage point, or being an amplifier. So for me, I think that's where my writing has moved towards, is just really embracing the fact that the stakes are so high, and when my father's a painter and a visual artist, this is he did this, and
beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
And he was my grandma, he always says that when he got an MFA in painting from Ohio University, he was the second Black person to do it. And he said he came back from school one day to his mom, and she showed her this picture of a house, and she was just like, oh, that's nice, but what does it mean? He's just like, oh, I don't know. And she was just like, well, why are you doing it if it's not helping anyone? And and essentially that is how he raised me to be with my own art. And I think that as I've gotten older, I'm going more towards that, I think John Maria was the first teacher I had that was just obviously the personal and political, things that we all know as Black people. And only now that white people are starting to feel America too, I think most artists now wouldn't say the personal and political are separate, because people who haven't felt the state are feeling it now.
It's a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
a lot of pressure.
Yeah, but I think the nice thing about just the thing I just find amazing about Blackness is just like all the hope. We are masters of hope. I was talking to Philip Williams today, and just the fact that for every day of enslavement, someone believed we could get free. That is a long time to believe, like multiple people, and we haven't even been free as long as we were enslaved. And so that right there alone is just miraculous.
That's a very good point, Hafizah. You know, when I started writing, my poems, whenever I'm writing them, whatever phase I'm in, I always feel a little scared that I'm doing the wrong thing. So when I was writing those, poems about, personal shame and, I always thought, oh, somebody's not going to like this. But even now, I try to, now at my age, I'm 80 years old, and I try to sort of stay close to, the moment.
Mhm.
And, I think again, change,
Yeah.
to be open, because the creative act is always about change. If we were doing something we did yesterday, would it be creative?
Yeah.
I mean, something we have to let go of expectations.
Mhm.
And so I think now, especially, maybe at 80 you can do this. And you can't are you in your 30s, Hafizah?
Still barely hanging on, but yes.
Because maybe young people have a different thing they have to do right now. But what I think is you do what you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I was writing those poems that were so hard to write about myself and my family, I would advise poets to write the hard poem. But the hard poem sometimes takes 40 years to write.
No one said it'd be easy.
And you need a lot of help along the way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. So thinking about like 1999, you and Cornelius were just like, let's do a retreat for Black poets.
90, well, we really decided in 95, I think.
So 1995. And then thinking about where that led, how do you even wrap your head around what Cave Canem has done, what you two have done? I think that is just like, how do you even believe yourself, when you look at all of this?
Well, it's a great gift, right? A great gift from the universe. But it was funny, like, I know that in myself, there was a little bit of a, like, belief or something that it could happen. I mean, it was like a surprise, but it was also like something felt, right.
Yeah.
Even from the first day, the first night. It just felt like there was so much power when those Black poets sat in a circle and saw each other, and that reflection of their own beauty and power, and and then they could talk about anything, or they could have any past, or nobody was saying you're not good if you're not that, or if it was all a mix of many different kinds of writing and people, and there didn't seem to be somebody at the top saying, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And, and I remember so many little things. I remember so many of the fellows saving our butts. They wanted this so much that people did things to make things happen and pass and get on balance. And, so it's a creative act from everyone who I think maybe all of us in some place inside us knew that this was going to be a very powerful change.
Yeah. I
for
love that.
all of us. For all of us.
Believe you can change the world, and then you convinced hundreds of people that you could, and then you did it.
Well, we didn't have any idea in a way, because it was just, 25 people and Cornelius and me and Sarah and Elizabeth and Alpha and Terrence and Michelle Elliott. They were our staff. And then these 25 poets, but it just felt like from the very beginning, you could just sense that this was something that had to happen.
Yeah.
It was like the universe, made it happen. It had to happen.
Is there, like, in light of just thinking, like, I feel like one of the most important things about Cave Canem is it just showed us all what was possible, and it was far more than anyone had let anyone believe. I love what you're saying, that like that having beauty reflected back, I mean, it allows you to create more beauty, and
power.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering, like, before we have you close us out with a poem, in terms of just like, this might be like a difficult question to answer, but like, what do you hope for poets, for poetry, for Black writers, for the future?
I hope that they can love themselves and treat themselves tenderly and appreciate themselves, how wonderful they are, like babies, hold the precious. And of course, I just see that out of the nature of that comes enormous gifts to those around them. And I see change, and I'm grateful that these poets who are working so hard, some who are suffering so much, are part of the change that we need.
Yeah. I mean, this is an important time for poets to be watching, to be witnessing, to be recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Toi.
Thank you, darling.
Of course. I'd love if you just read us another poem to take us out in some more poetry, please.
How about you? Do you have a poem to read?
I can't show you my desk because it's because it's a mess. I don't have any on me, but I will say the thing I love about Zoom is no one sees you or sitting in chaos. Below here, it's all chaos.
You can't find a poem in that chaos?
I honestly do not know where any of my poetry books are.
I don't want to put the pressure on you, but
I think I gave Philip the one I had out.
If you
but
find
I do have these books, Captivity and the Black Notebooks for The Undertaker's Daughter.
Okay, now let's see. So I read the one about Sonia, right?
Yes.
And I read the one about the angel. Mm-hmm. And the blue nightgown and the weakness, right?
Yeah.
Let's see if I have this other one over here. Okay. Okay. I can't find it right now, but this is just a little funny one. It's called Nominated for the National Book Award. I didn't win the award, but that night in a dream, I slept with the winner. I have always loved his poems, his kindness and humility. I wasn't even mad at the judges. I just told myself, back to the real world, and I was fine. We didn't have sex. All night, we read our poems to each other, tender lovers of our ancient art.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hafizah. Did you find something?
Oh, let me see.
Oh, God.
The pressure.
We got time.
You know what? This is why I have to clean my office. All I have are just piles and piles. Oh wait, here's one.
Oh,
This isn't art. This is how old. So there could be mistakes. I will read
oh, I'm so glad you found it.
just with the chaos of books. I will read a short one. Let me see. I'll just read the second one. Naming ceremony. My father, who spends most of his days painting pictures, just coming home to my mother stroking out, was like walking in on an affair. Bending, he demonstrates how an aneurysm hugged her to her knees. Over and over, my father draws a loss so big it is itself an inception. A story he knows better than the day his daughters were born. Every retelling different, bluer than redder. His memory bruising the neck of whomever he can will to listen. His heart is strong. He has the receipts, a scar on his breast that I've cleaned like a smudge on a window. Over and over, my father draws me a picture of the crescent moon, fish hooking her hospital room. He loses the story for the pleasure of finding it. His tongue, the builder of a maze. I can tell you our best days weren't glad. He's a history whittled down to this single story. In my version, when her mind blew, boys I barely knew played Beirut, cans of Paps crushed against her shoulders, white balls flicking into crimson solo cups, the night lost to the drawl of a far gone gurney.
Wow. So beautiful. What wonderful metaphors.
Thank you, thank you. Learn from the best. All right, thank you so much to all our viewers for joining us and celebrating Toi, who has changed the landscape of poetry forever. Thank you so much, Toi. Congratulations on the BoBi Award.
Thank you, Hafizah, for a wonderful 45 minutes.
Of course,
I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And you're off air. Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you.
Really beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, Toi. That was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Oh, it's a lovely evening to hear. How is it with you?
It's been pretending to rain all day, and so it's just like achy joints.
Oh no. What are you going to eat for dinner, Hafizah?
I think I'm gonna order a burger. I mean, like sometimes you just have to treat yourself. I'm just like, I've been working on edits for my nonfiction book all day because they're
Oh my
due on
God.
Friday, and I'm just like,
Oh, that's
there's no
wonderful.
time for cooking.
What's the nonfiction book?
It's called The Black Period on Personhood, Race, and Origin. And it's like just kind of like a memoir that's essentially looking at how like we can revise the stories that we inherit. Like
Wonderful.
and so like the Black Period, the idea of the Black Period is just like the world that we build for ourselves as Black Period.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, when will we be able to read it?
September 2022, but I'll make sure they send you a copy.
Thank you, Hafizah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for interviewing me.
Of course. Thank you for all your wisdom.
All right, baby.
Bye.
Bye.